And it probably has nothing to do with being a millennial, right? My brain is just not wired for technology. I like to be with people and talk, and I like paper.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I always like paper and pens.
Yeah, I can't read on a Kindle. Sorry.
Handwrite all your things.
The old school. I still keep a paper planner.
You do have a mobile phone though.
I do, right? I'm not that much of a dinosaur, luckily. All right, you're on. Okay, great. So what I've done really quick is I passed out some books, and I would love for you guys just either take a picture if any one of them interests you. Kay, specifically, I gave you that book because it has everything to do with different parts of the world, activities that people do that keep them young and active, and there's a lot in there about community. And so
We have a copy.
you do have a copy. Okay, great. So circulate them around. There's different ones. There's one called Brain Food that's about nourishing the brain. Alzheimer's and dementia is real. We all know that. It's very prevalent. So these are just really amazing books that I have read and I have gleaned from, and I just wanted to share them with you. Take a picture of the cover if any of them interest you. So really quick, just a little bit of background about me. I am a board-certified integrative health and wellness coach. I originally was in the insurance business for about 11 years. I just sold my business last August. And kind of what precipitated that is that I had a child. My husband and I had our first and only child. And some things started to happen with my health. It all kind of can go sideways after childbirth sometimes, right? So I just wasn't quite right after I gave birth. Developed a thyroid condition and some other things. And then we got a little deeper into the health thing because my son also started to develop some issues. He started to have seizures, and he has been diagnosed with a seizure disorder. I'm happy to report that it's very well managed through diet, thank God, and CBD oil, which I know that's controversial. We can talk about it offline later, but it was prescribed by his pediatric neurologist, and there's no THC in it. There's nothing groovy in it. So, but he's also been diagnosed with something called peroxisomal dysfunction, and that's very complicated. We're not going to get into it, but we're still on that journey. There's still a lot unfolding and a lot that we're working towards. And so being in the insurance business and having these things come up with myself and my son, I was more interested in ensuring people's future and being proactive about their health the way that I've had to be, caring more about their pre-existing conditions than getting them insured. Of course I wanted to get them insured, but I wanted to get a little deeper into things. And that's kind of one of the reasons what led me out of the insurance business and more into health and wellness and nutrition. So that said, I want to open up with a little something that Charles Stanley wrote, because I love Charles Stanley. I wish he was my grandpa. He's so cute, so wise. So you know these little devotionals that come in the mail? This one came in at the start of the year, and I just love it. And he references 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 12 through 20. I'm not going to read the scripture part because Kelsey might kill me if I don't get through the manual. But if you want to make a note of it, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 12 through 20. And it's called A Healthy Body. Many people today are obsessed with health and fitness. They watch what they eat and exercise religiously. But is that really the most important thing in life? Not according to Scripture. Paul told Timothy, bodily discipline is only of a little profit, but godliness is profitable for all things. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8. Yet, this doesn't mean we should ignore our physical bodies and indulge in unhealthy practices. These are the only bodies we have at present, the only ones with which to serve the Lord and accomplish whatever He has planned for us, which is kind of what Dale was talking about. Therefore, we should do our best to take care of them. So what does Scripture say about our bodies? Paul teaches that if we are believers, they belong to God, are members of Christ, and are the temples of the Holy Spirit. What an amazing thought, that our bodies belong to the divine Trinity. Therefore, we must care for them and not ignore or abuse them with sinful or self-indulgent practices. Because Christians respect church as a place where God is worshipped, none of us would walk into a sanctuary and deliberately vandalize it by smearing paint all over the walls. Yet our bodies are indwelt by the Holy Spirit, and are worthy of more honor than any house of worship. Nevertheless, some believers assume that neglecting or mistreating their bodies is their prerogative. However, as we read in Scripture, our bodies belong not to us but to the Lord, who purchased us with his own blood. The goal isn't to make physical health an idol, but to be responsible to God for how we treat this marvelous gift from him. I mean, I could just drop the mic after that. I mean, it was very convicting. You know, I think sometimes we think, well, you know, this is a temporary place. I'm just waiting for Jesus to come and get me, and then I get my resurrection body, and it's all good. But clearly, we need to really take good care of ourselves here to do God's work. And again, that's sort of what encompasses everything that we've been talking about today. So I'll dive right in. We are again on page 52 of the manual, and I'm not going to go through every single sentence, but I just want to do an overview. And first we'll start with Hippocrates' quote, "Food is medicine," right? So let thy food be medicine and medicine thy food. I'm a big believer in that. Again, as I stated, my son has a seizure disorder, and he has been seizure-free for almost 2 years now, just making dietary changes between that and the CBD oil. It's been huge. So really fun, not so fun fact, unhealthy diet contributes to approximately 678 deaths each year in the United States due to nutrition and obesity-related diseases such as heart disease, cancer, and type 2 diabetes. In the same study, tobacco-related deaths were fewer, 497,437, and that's from the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, and I referenced their website. So food is huge. It controls inflammation, it balances hormones, it regulates your cardiovascular health, and just helping the digestive organs to process and eliminate waste. Epigenetics. Has anyone heard of epigenetics? No. Epigenetics, what's really cool about it, I'll just give you my summary of what it is. Your genes are not your destiny. So while we have some static genes, meaning we cannot change them, they are set in stone the way God made them, we do have the ability, though, to change the way our genes replicate in the future in other areas, other aspects of the body, which is massive. So just because my grandmother died of breast cancer does not mean that I am doomed to have breast cancer. The way that we fuel our bodies, taking in all the components that everybody here has been talking about, from, you know, Dale's piece to Kelsey's nutrition, to the self-care, all of that together contributes to the overall our overall health and epigenetics. So God gave us free will, right? He gave us free will, and the fact that we can actually move in a way and feed ourselves in a way and take care of ourselves spiritually in a way that could actually alter your genetic material, I think is very profound. I really do. And it's all a matter of our choice. We have to choose to do it. And I just think that's very impactful. So we need to ask ourselves if we want to live for today or live for a long future, a long fruitful future, working for the Lord. And if not, doing things outside the home, even just in the home, whatever it may be, I think it's applicable to everybody. Really quick quote that I want to give you from the book Brain Food. This doc, she lost her grandma to Alzheimer's, and it became her mission to learn the brain inside and out, and her specialty is Alzheimer's treatment and research. Bottom of page 52, recent medical breakthroughs have radically changed our understanding of aging and disease by showing that the brain changes leading to dementia unfold over decades, 20 to 40 years before anyone forgets a name or loses their keys. So when I read that, I was like, dang. So again, it's kind of the question I just posed is, do we want to live for today and just eat whatever we want and live sedentary lives? Part of the behavior change that we want to try to take on is looking down the road and into the future, because what we do today impacts us in the future, and for better or for worse, and we have to make the choice of how we want that to look. So moving on, page 53, Gut 101. Oh, so much fun. So the gut is referred to as the second brain. There's a gut-brain axis, right, that allows for biochemical signaling between your GI system and your central nervous system. I mean, we could get into, that alone is its own subject. It's amazing. The gastrointestinal system comprises 80% of the body's immune system. So how we're feeding ourselves, how we're living is going to dictate, are we sick all the time? Are we, just having the occasional cold? It really does behoove us to kind of nourish ourselves really well, as best as we can, which we'll get into those details, for our immunity. 90% of our serotonin, our happy chemical, is made in there, which is kind of amazing. There are more neurons in the small intestine than there are in the entire spinal cord. It is the only system in the body that has its own independently operating nervous system called the enteric nervous system, also known as the second brain. Last little tidbit here, there are between 400 and 1,000 species of microbes living in your gut. So that can total out to about 2 pounds just of the little microorganisms that live in your gut, which is kind of amazing. And when I hear things like that, I just think about how amazing God is to create. If you were to crack a cell open and all the moving parts that are in it, and his infinite wisdom, the way he just makes all these things, it just blows me away. It's just beautiful. Okay, so those are some just general facts about it, but let's get into gut bacteria imbalance, also known as dysbiosis. That's when you have too many of a certain bacteria in the wrong place. So for example, there's a doctor who I follow, Dr. Nemechek, and he describes it as such that you have your birds in the air and you have your fish in the water. So what can happen is your fish can go up in the air and be with the birds rather than being down in the water. So things are a little flip-flopped. So dysbiosis is kind of like the beginning of many bad things. But we all can have a form of dysbiosis. I do. I have a condition called SIBO. It's called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So I've got some fish in the air, and it's something that I manage, but it can happen with thyroid conditions and other things. There are so many reasons. We have so many toxins that we live with. Our food, we hope it's clean, especially even buying organic, it's not perfect, right? There are just a lot of reasons why we can develop dysbiosis, overuse of antibiotics, what have you. But what can happen is those bugs that don't belong where they are, they start to replicate very quickly. And what happens is that they excrete endotoxins called lipopolysaccharides, or LPS, which is listed there on page 53. So that really leads to a whole lot of bad, which means you can develop depression. It also affects your bioavailability. So you're eating the right foods, but your body is not able to readily absorb those foods and nourish you with those foods because it's very compromised. Okay, your bugs are basically hijacking your nutrition. It affects the thyroid. I can appreciate that. I'm on that path myself. Kidneys, etc. There's a lot of detail in the manual that you can read on your own time from the bottom of 53 to 54. And just some signs of gut issues. You're going to have belching and gas. You're going to have extreme bloating. I don't just mean like, I just ate Thanksgiving dinner and I'm pretty full. You'll wake up with a flat stomach, but by the end of the day, you look like you might be like in your second trimester of pregnancy. Extreme bloating. Diarrhea, or conversely, you cannot have any stool output for like weeks. Something like that. So there's a wide range. Nausea, bad breath, heartburn. Heartburn is, if you have consistent heartburn, something's not right there. A balanced microbiome is responsible for producing a lot of your vitamins, and vitamin B12, butyrate, and K2 are some examples. Also, what's great about keeping it in balance is that it gives less of an opportunity for the the bad guys, the yeast overgrowth or the bacteria that doesn't belong there to proliferate. Creates enzymes that destroy harmful bacteria, and stimulating secretion of IgA, which is a regulatory T cell, which again helps us with our immune system. Okay, so again, top probiotic killers: antibiotics, medications, emotional stress. Oh, all things come back to stress, don't they? Gluten, alcohol, excess or processed sugar, lack of exercise, smoking, poor sleep quality, and toxins in our food and the air, you name it. So really quick about probiotics, since we're talking about microbiomes. I caution people about jumping on a probiotic, because as unique as God has made each and every one of us, your microbiome is going to look different than mine, and mine's going to look different than yours. And there's a lot of people out there selling a lot of supplements. There's a lot of people selling a lot of everything, right? So I would just caution you about starting a supplement and get it from your food as best you can. That would be and it's cheaper. That would be my first go-to that I would advise people to do. So what are those foods? Apple cider vinegar is actually considered a good one, and you can make salad dressings out of it. Super easy. I mean, really easy. Good way to get it in. Unsweetened yogurt or kefir. There's also non-dairy options, which I tend to prefer. Miso, raw cheese, such as goat's milk, sheep, or A2 cow's milk. Fermented foods such as kimchi, kombucha, and sauerkraut. I mean, it sounds really weird, y'all, but if you put sauerkraut on your eggs, it's kind of good. I'm serious, try it. Don't knock it till you try it. There's just little ways we could sneak in those foods to feed our little bugs. And yeah, so I would say before you start a probiotic supplement, if that's an option that you're investigating, I would definitely see a registered dietitian first, or a certified nutrition specialist who can maybe do some clinical work on the side to check your labs, maybe do a stool test, things like that. I just think that God wants us to keep it as simple as possible and nourish ourselves with the food that He's given us. And that would be my go-to there with the probiotics. Next on page 56, I love this topic, fasting. I love it for two major reasons. The biblical portion of fasting, I mean, it's all throughout the Bible, and it's not easy to do. I understand that. What I love about it, though, is that it gives you, and Dale could probably speak on this too, but it really gives you that time to get clarity and to hear the Lord. And even with those gurgling hunger pains, to get in your Bible and be like, all right, Lord, He sees your heart. You're raw. You're in that raw state. You're hungry. Speak to me. And I love that aspect of fasting. And what's really cool is that you can take fasting from the spiritual sense, and also, 2 for 1, it's a twofer. You also can reap the benefits of what it does for you physically. So what does that look like? Fasting is a cleanup and repair situation. So what that does is it allows your body ample time to basically have a clean slate to do all that it needs to do. Again, God in His amazing infinite wisdom, we have all these little processes going on in our bodies. We have all these cells, we have organs, and they all need some time to not work digesting our food. If we keep feeding ourselves, we don't give our body that time to push out the bad. The brain even has to take that time when we sleep, and it replenishes itself, and it takes out the toxins, and it goes all the way down the body. And so it's a really, really important cleanup and repair process. It regulates 20% of your gene expression too. So again, the gene expression can either go in the way we want it to or not, based on that. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Intermittent fasting and or time-restricted eating. It's not a diet. This is Kelsey's words, and I love that she put this in here. It's not a diet, it's a pattern of eating. I love that, because it's not a diet. You're not starving yourself all day long. We're going to get into how long that looks for you, and to play with it, and to just be curious about fasting. So it gives you time to digest your meals in a condensed amount of time. Well, what's that time look like? So 12 hours is where I would recommend everybody start, right? So say, hypothetically, simple math, we ate dinner at 7 p.m. and we're not gonna eat again until 7 a.m. the next day, right? And just even starting with 12 hours, you'd be surprised. It sounds very simple, but a lot of us don't even wait 12 hours to eat. You know, we'll eat and snack right up until bedtime, which affects your sleep, because your body's like, yay, we're awake. What are we doing? But just trying to find that sweet spot for you. What happens in that process is the body burns glucose first, right? Our sugar stores. And then once we've gone through the glucose, it then starts to tap into the ketones. And that's where weight loss happens. That is where the magic happens. So what I would recommend is that you start with the 12 hours. If you feel good, I'd say 3 weeks is a good time frame to play around with fasting and how many hours of fasting would work for you.
Like stick to one block for 3 weeks?
No, I would say for some people fasting is not a great option in general due to pre-existing conditions potentially. Say you have a mom who's got 2 kids, she's got Hashimoto's, a thyroid condition, autoimmune condition. She works out really, really hard and works. That person who's really, really strapped thin like that, she may not do as well fasting for 16 hours the way that, a man might, It just depends on the person, which is why I would recommend playing around with it. So you could try the 7 to 7.
For 3 weeks, you're saying? Like give it time to see?
So, yes. So what you'd want to do is start with 12 and then tack on another hour. So if you're feeling good after a couple days, okay, well, what would it feel like if I fasted for 13 hours? Oh, I'm still feeling pretty good. Okay, so next week I'm going to bump it up to 14. And you can play with it that way. But even if you just did the 12, that would be great. That is the minimum to kind of repair the body, to give it time. So, fasting is a hormetic stressor, which is a positive stress, right? And an example of a positive stress is when we exercise. When you're like, I cannot lift this weight anymore, my arms are going to fall off. Your body's going to respond. You're tearing those muscles and it's going to build them back up so that you can eventually meet that ability and that strength will increase over time. So while it might be difficult to fast, it's actually a positive stressor. It's a very good thing for us. It also allows autophagy, which is the killing off of the dead cells that just kind of float around in our bodies. Yes. What else? So, some things that are kind of cool about fasting is that it can simplify the day and how you're planning your meals. You can fast through the early morning, depending on what time frame you look at. Have your lunch, have a dinner, and you're done. Or conversely, you have your breakfast, no lunch, and a dinner, and you're done. The most I would say to work up to is 16 hours. That is the max. There's also a book, one of the books that we circulated, The Longevity Diet, was written by Walter Longo. He's a PhD out of USC. He has dedicated his life to fasting and how it helps, not just for weight loss, that's nice, but he's actually done research, quantifiable research on how fasting helps cancer patients going through chemo and how it helps a vast majority of people, diabetics, so forth and so on. It's pretty amazing. It's not just a diet kind of related weight loss fad. There is hard science to back up fasting. And there's alternate day fasting if you'd rather do that. I'm going to fast on Monday or Sunday, eat again on Monday. You could alternate days like that. I mean, there's no wrong way to just kind of play with it. It's all about just being curious about it and getting your toe in the water. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I have heard that you're supposed to eat within a certain amount of time of waking to jumpstart your metabolism. Do you disagree with that?
So Kelsey wrote a little something about that down here. See, the problem with that is that when you when you are feeding yourself that frequently, you're kind of cluttering up the system so your body can never really jumpstart itself. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I think your metabolism will actually be there will be more of a benefit to the metabolism from having fasted. And I do want to say something about fasting. You must drink a lot of water. It's not just about fasting from everything. You have to hydrate. That is hugely important, and I think you guys may.
We're going to cover that on
Okay.
Monday.
So the amount of water you should be drinking is your weight cut in half, so divide that by 2, and that number is the amount of ounces of water you should be drinking.
Bare minimum.
Bare minimum? And that's if you're not training, or if you're visiting Arizona, which is where I'm from. It's hotter than Hades
We're
there.
on certain eggs. So.
Yeah, so hydration is hugely important. And I know that doesn't give you like a scientific explanation for that, but just like the whole no-fat diet, you know, no-fat diet thing that happened in the 90s, that's been totally disproven. The same is true with the eating all the time. And I know that was the way that we were taught, but things are unrolling and we're learning new things all the time. So just keep that in mind, and we can talk one-on-one more about that if you'd like.
Can you drink between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m.? Or I gotta get all that water in before 7?
No, ma'am, you drink the whole time,
Okay.
anytime. There is never a ceiling on our water intake.
Okay.
And in fact, when I fast, I do coffee, black coffee. So,
Okay.
yeah.
She can do it.
Oh yeah, I could not live without my coffee.
But then
So-
you just can't add anything to it.
There are different schools of thought. You know, some people do the ghee butter and the MCT oil. There is a stevia concentrate that I'm not a big stevia person, and I certainly don't do sweeteners, like artificial sweeteners. Like, no, those are not allowed. But there's a stevia concentrate that doesn't have any chemicals in it, and it's pretty amazing if you needed a little sweet. But some people would argue nothing, like not even coffee. But I think black coffee's okay. That's just, you know.
With
just
stevia
like-
concentrate.
Sometimes.
Is that what you use?
I don't do that first thing when I'm fasting. That would be something that I would do when I'm done with the fast, or if I'm indulging a little bit. It's not something I do every single day, but I do like a little sweet. Who doesn't? And I use it with my baking. But we'll get into that later, hopefully. I got to stay on track. Okay, so we are moving on. Food is medicine, right? We know that food can spike cortisol, leading a chain reaction of things. It can erode the digestive system. It can build bad bacteria. We're going to get into that later too, but the more sugar we eat, the more it feeds those bad, but they're not bad. It's not that they're bad. It's that they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they're growing and multiplying, and they shouldn't be there. But sugar feeds them. So they love it when we eat sugar, even from fruit. So we'll get into more of that later. It affects the brain, right? It is going to certainly affect our blood sugar, our cholesterol levels, stress on the organs, can create addictions. Sugar's highly addictive. Sugar and cheese are highly addictive. I think there's a little place in the brain that lights up when they've done studies when people eat cheese, and it's the same sort of sensation as having like a hardcore drug like heroin, I think is what I read, which is kind of insane. But
Blood
Yeah.
centers light up.
yeah,
And actually for sugar, they light up 8 times brighter.
yeah.
Well, my head is glowing.
Which makes sense, right? Because who doesn't love cheese and who doesn't love sugar? Okay, so what we want to do, our goal is to keep our gut healthy as best we can, because that in turn helps to balance the hormones, and it keeps inflammation at bay. And inflammation is the root of all evil. Inflammation, this is a very blanket statement, but I've heard it from so many doctors, and I believe it to be true, and I've heard TED Talks about it, and we can talk offline about this, but inflammation is the root of all disease, right? Your body's trying to say something's not right. There's a small fire that started, and it continues to build, and we can only take that fire for so long before there's going to be some really negative repercussions, and diseases will start to roll out and manifest. So that is why it is so important. So let's get into more of the nuts and bolts. Page 59, 3 macronutrients: carbohydrates, fat, and protein. So carbohydrates, people think, well, those are bad. Carbohydrates are the devil. Well, that's not true. Depends what kind of carbohydrates you're eating, right? So we've got simple carbs and complex. I say all day on the simple carbs during your fasting window, should you choose to dabble. Simple carbs are great, especially if you're very active. I'm sorry, complex carbs are very good, especially if you're very active. Excuse me. You're like, yay!
Yeah.
Simple carbs all day when I'm working out. No, I apologize. Complex carbs. The simple carbs, the problem with them is that they generate a lot of insulin, right? And that basically gives us energy for the short term. But then what happens is that we kind of hit that plateau and then we crash and then we're super tired. And then we're reaching for more sugar to kind of give us that little hit that we need. The brain's like, I need another hit. You know, I need some more energy. And we're getting it in sort of this empty way, and it's not sustainable. So that's where the complex carbs come in to play. So complex carbs consist of more fiber and starch and less sugar. Simple carbs are basically all sugar. That's the problem with them. So simple carbs are going to consist of your typical sugars, right? Even raw sugars or brown sugar, you think they're healthy. They are still simple carbs. Corn, high fructose corn syrup, fruit juice, soda, cereal, packaged foods, anything ending with ose, right? So glucose, fructose, and sucrose. Complex carbs are going to consist of kind of more of your whole fruits and vegetables. So nuts and seeds as well, and whole grains that are not processed, okay? So the thing with the simple carbohydrates is that they cause the cravings for sugar, and you have that vicious cycle, and then you end up gaining more weight. And so it becomes counter to what your goals are to lose weight. So fill up on the good carbs. You know, investigate what those are for you. Sweet potatoes are a good one. I love a sweet potato. There's just a lot of really good carbs that we can still enjoy. I think people get the misconception that, well, I'm going to clean up how I eat, so I'm just going to eat cardboard and drink water, and nothing tastes good, and I can't eat salt, and that's just not true. And I would love to talk more about that later in this manual. Okay, so fat and protein, those are our other macronutrients. Your body depends on what you eat to convert it into energy. So the right sources of fat are really great ways to burn fuel and for longer. They help manage your blood sugar, which is very ideal for diabetics. And some great examples of that, which who doesn't like avocado? I guess there's some people that don't. Okay, skip the avocado.
You don't like avocado? Oh,
I could eat one every day
Okay.
with salt, just plain.
I gotta
Nuts and seeds, healthy oils such as avocado, coconut, and extra virgin olive oil. Ideally less of the dairy form of fat. Definitely fried foods, no bueno. And packaged foods. Those are off. Those are not the kind of, that's not the fat that we want. We want whole fat and oils and nutrient-rich fat. Protein. Protein is the building block of all life. I mean, it's essential. And what it does is it plays in with hormones that help with a feedback system that keeps our blood glucose levels stable. So you want to eat more of that protein. You want to eat more of that fiber. You feel satiated. It's a slower burn versus that quick burn. And then your brain needs that hit again, right? So ideally you want to keep that balanced. And we're going to get into more details of, some options to do that food-wise. Okay, so another book that I brought here for you guys is What the Heck Should I Eat? I love that title. And who has not felt that way when you're going through the store, right? You're going to feel that way this weekend when you go shopping. You're going to be like, oh, what did Yvonne say? What am I supposed to eat? What? Okay. So I highly recommend that book. I have taken it with me into the grocery store. I don't care how I look. I go in there with it, and sometimes I have to kind of reevaluate, okay, meal planning, what fish should I avoid? He gets into everything. What the heck should I eat?
What the heck should I eat is the actual book. Yeah.
By Mark Hyman, Dr. Mark Hyman. He's amazing. Love him. He was on his own journey of his own where he was incredibly ill and had to rethink everything, even as a physician, to heal himself, and doing it very much the way that Kelsey has promoted through Mission Fit. So we're on the right path. But I highly recommend that book. Get it on Amazon. Get it used. Just get it if you can. So what the heck should I eat, right? We want to really eat the rainbow, and I don't mean Skittles. No, I mean as much variety of fruits and vegetables that are colorful. Do you guys remember Roy G. Biv from like your old biology courses? Yeah, so we want to eat all the colors and mix it up as much as you can. It really helps to lower the risk for heart disease, cancer, macular degeneration, memory, and limits damage to cells caused by free radicals, right? Like blueberries are like little magic bullets that help, hiya, they combat the free radicals in our body.
I hope you're never in a fight, Yvonne.
I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover. So there. White, examples of white, you know. When I looked at this again last night, I was like, okay, well I got two, parsnips and rutabaga. And the two of them together baked in the oven, and you chop up some pecans, and you put some extra virgin olive oil in there and some salt. It's good.
Would you consider cauliflower nutritious?
Nutritious? I would, for certain people, yeah, if you can tolerate it. Because some people, they just can't. Yeah, definitely, cauliflower has some of its own properties. But yeah, that's a good white one. I feel like that's kind of a well-known one, so I was trying to rack my brain for some of those really like unique outliers, like rutabaga and parsnips. Yes, and they provide a plethora of things such as potassium, vitamin C, folate, niacin, and yeah, they're just chock full of goodness. And the fiber, again, feed the good bugs. Fiber's our friend. All right, so tips for looking for your fruits and veggies. You know, try to buy them in season. Farmers markets are awesome. I go to one in Matthews, love it. Typically it's more cost effective than going to Whole Foods or Earth Fare. And they do have organic options. They have good eggs too. Organic berries are the best in terms of fruit. They have a low glycemic load, which is what we want. And we want to kind of avoid the high glycemic load fruits, such as black grapes, pineapple, a very ripe banana. I know you guys are probably going to want to shoot me. Bananas are delicious, but a really ripe banana is just full of sugar. Mango and watermelon, I know they're so yummy, but we just want to kind of limit those and not buy like one of those big bowls of fruit, pre-cut fruit, and just mow the whole thing down and say, oh, it's healthy, it's fruit. You know, we still have to be a little bit mindful of how much of that fruit we're taking in. Even with veggies, you know, just playing with more vegetables, and if something doesn't agree with you, some vegetables don't agree with us, right? So just play around with it, but try to get in more whole fruits and vegetables, mostly veggies. There's a little blurb here on the bottom of 61. I'm going to make this really simple and quick with nightshades. I believe that, I've said this before, our nutrition is just as individualized as we are and God made us. We are all so incredibly different. So, you know, Kelsey could probably tolerate eggplant, and I would not tolerate that, you know. Were you going to say something? Oh, okay. The biggest demographic of people that I see that don't do well with nightshades are people with autoimmune disorders. It sort of flames the fire for them, and it's due to solanine, which is naturally occurring in those nightshades. And you know, some of those would look like tomato and peppers, eggplant. It's even argued that cucumber is too, but I still eat cucumber. Paprika, pepper flakes, cayenne pepper, things like that. Ways that you'll know that you're not responding well to them is you'll potentially get hives, heartburn like crazy, nausea, excess mucus production, that's one that Kelsey added in here.
Eczema.
Eczema and achy body, your joints.
So it's okay to eat these unless they do that to you?
Yeah, if
Oh,
you don't
okay.
have an issue with them,
Okay, good.
everybody's different. Yeah, let's not mess with it if it's not broken, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if that works for you, wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, so page 62. The Environmental Working Group. They are an organization that every year they reevaluate what foods we should be eating organic and which foods we don't have to eat organic. So this is really nice when you're shopping, because if you don't have to buy everything organic, great, because you're going to save yourself a lot of money. But what do I buy organic and what doesn't have to be? So the Environmental Working Group, or EWG, puts this out every year. Their Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Okay, so how they determine that is which are the most sprayed, most affected by the herbicides. And that's how they come up with the Dirty Dozen. And berries are always on there. They have that really thin little skin. They're highly sprayed. They're just little bombs if they're not organic. And I don't mean the good kind. I mean, they're like an epigenetic bomb. They're harmful, especially if we eat on them naturally, which we tend to do. We tend to put berries in our mouth like it's candy. You know, we just kind of mow them down. So strawberries, spinach, kale, nectarines, apples, grapes, peaches, cherries, pears, tomatoes, celery, and potato. Those are all on the Dirty Dozen list. We'll get a new one in 2020. The Clean 15, avocados are expensive, so it's nice that you don't have to buy them organic. Just wash them before you cut into them. And sweet corn, pineapple, frozen sweet peas, onions, papaya, eggplant, asparagus, kiwis, cabbage, cauliflower, cantaloupe, broccoli, mushroom, and honeydew melons. Those are all in the Clean 15. So that just gives you a little bit of a guide. Oh, sorry.
Because I don't see blueberries on either one of these lists, and you have blueberries, and we don't spray them on anything, and I read that they have no natural predators. So do we need to buy those organic?
I don't know why they're not on here, because in years past they have been.
Okay.
I would always say that the berries should be organic.
Okay.
That is just my default mode is to buy them organic. But if you have your own, I mean, that could be different.
Well, there's no bugs get on blueberry bushes anywhere.
They still get, I mean, if you're talking about in the grand scheme of things,
Right.
they're still gonna get sprayed by
Okay.
major farmers and growers, yeah.
So the organic one, that's-
I would, yeah, berries are just notorious for being some of the most heavily sprayed,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure why I didn't make it on the list for this year. All right, superfoods. All right, does anybody off the top of their head know of a superfood? They're packed with nutrients, they're the cat's
Kale?
pajamas.
Kale?
Kale,
Spinach.
spinach, like leafy greens,
Broccoli.
good, yeah, exactly. What about like the good fats? Are there any superfood fats out there?
Avocados.
Except for you don't like avocado. She doesn't have to partake in the avocado. How about coconut oil? Right?
I'm so confused why people might gross out by me saying this, so I'm exposing myself a little bit. But like, why would I spend a lot of time washing the avocado if I'm eating the inside of the avocado?
Oh, I do that with bananas too.
What?
Yeah, I do. I'm crazy, I know.
Yeah.
Actually, our pediatrician recommended that with the bananas because when they go through the transport system, there's all kinds of yuck on them. Yeah,
So
it is.
because I'm putting a knife through it, you would want that?
I just wash it like I would wash my hands. It takes 2 seconds. And then
I guess I had it just in my head, I'm like, if you're eating the inside or something.
No, that's a really good question.
Okay.
But you don't have to be as neurotic as I am. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
that's okay, I'm
I'm-
probably way on the other side, so.
I just want you to eat it, and that's,
Okay.
let's
I got
start
it.
there.
I
Let's
got
just-
it, okay. I got it, okay.
Step one, eat it. Step two,
Then when you get comfortable with the
Figure out the
avocado, wash
system
it.
later, let's just get it in you, I got it.
It's all about baby steps,
Okay.
completely. Rome wasn't built in a day. This is a process. Okay, grass-fed, organic, pasture-raised proteins, right, are incredibly helpful for us nutritionally. There is a vast array of things that we can eat if we are vegetarian or vegan. as well, and that's where our nuts come in.
Mm.
Lentils are amazing, garbanzo beans.
Would those be organic? Like it would be important to buy organic lentils?
I mean, I do.
Okay.
You're asking the wrong girl, but
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Again, I try to do.
Well, yeah, you've got, okay. Because
Yeah.
I am a vegetarian, so I do some of that, but then I'm always confused
Yeah.
of how I should even be buying it.
I would still try to do organic, and even with like rice, there's a lot of
Bad rice.
there's a lot of bad stuff in rice that's been detected too. So if you could buy organic when you can, that would be great. So another great food, eggs. Eggs kind of like, they come and go, right? Another old
Yeah.
fact we were given, eggs will kill you, they'll give you a heart attack, they're bad, stay away from them. So not true. Now again, the pendulum has swung back this way. They are so nutrient dense, they have omega-3s in them. I can't remember which one of those books, I think maybe all of them probably has something about eggs in there, because they're so incredibly nutrient dense.
And cheap.
And cheap.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into that in a minute, maybe not, depending on the kind you buy. They have
I know what's coming.
essential amino acids in them, high in vitamins. They're just amazing. I mean, again, God didn't make them for no reason. I mean, he knew what he was doing. Okay, so really quick, we're going to finish our macronutrient section. So now we're diving into fat. I'm going to try to keep this simple. It's one of our other macronutrients. It's vital for the process of digestion, transport, conversion, and energy extraction. Primary source of stored energy, right? So once we burn through that glucose during that fast, then we get to go and use this fat as our fuel source. And that's when the weight tends to come off too. It's essential for our hormones to be directed to the proper locations throughout the body, and it literally wraps around every cell in your body. Fat is incredibly important. So let's, Kelsey, you mind if I jump ahead?
Go for it, whatever you want.
Okay, because, yeah. Okay, the manual though, whatever I don't cover, please do a little light reading. Read it, take it into bed with you.
I just want to at the beginning that
Finish.
we'd hit the highlights and then this week dig into the nitty gritty here.
Okay, good. Fat gets a bad rap, but it has a place. It's essential in the body, and eating fat is actually another misconception. It's kind of been, we've been told not to eat fat, but it's about what fats you eat and what you're eating between meals. If you're eating cheese doodles between your meals and eating a high-fat diet, that's not as ideal as if you're pairing it with salad and your organic fruit and veggies or whatever else it may be. So let's jump down to page 65, understanding cholesterol, right? We've got the two types. We've got, I think there's a typo there, so we apologize. HDL is the good and LDL is the bad. So,
Wait, HDL is the good.
yes, and LDL is the bad.
There's a typo.
And there's a typo in there, so we apologize for that. Just on the understanding cholesterol part. So you want your good cholesterol to be greater than or equal to 60, and your bad cholesterol less than 100. And your total should be less than 200. This is according to the CDC, by the way. And triglycerides should be less than 150. And actually, what I read in Dr. Walter Longo's, that book, The Longevity Diet, he actually recommends that people over the age of 60, that it behooves them to have higher cholesterol levels. It's actually very good for the brain because we need to eat more proteins. 60 and older, more protein and higher cholesterol actually helps to shield from dementia and Alzheimer's. So that was a really big discovery for me when I read the Longevity Diet book. Okay, so those are just some, sorry I'm throwing this at you so quickly, but those are kind of the cholesterol numbers per the CDC. And, you know, a great way to lower that cholesterol, as we've discussed, is nutrition, exercise. Also supplementing with an omega-3 supplement is great as well. So, middle of 66, page 66. Dr. David Perlmutter, another book I brought, Brain. How much do we need? According to Dr. David Perlmutter, who is a neurologist and best-selling author of Brain, he recommends 1,000 milligrams a day. And if you wanted to seek out a registered dietitian or a doctor to evaluate that for you, if you're training very hard, you might need a little bit more. What's also great about it is that it really tones down inflammation. Omega-3s are very good at putting out those fires in the body of inflammation. Which brand should I take? So Now brand is a really good one. Nordic Naturals. And Barlean's Pills or Swirl Form. I think Kelsey put that one in. I'm not familiar with that one. So what's so important about polyunsaturated fatty acids, otherwise known as PUFAs? They're essential because your body can't make them. So we have to supplement with a good DHA supplement. They help to regulate, again, they're going to help to regulate inflammation in the body. They're going to help with your triglycerides to keep them in check where they need to be. And am I doing on time? Lower triglycerides, ALA. So say you have a vegan in the family, or you just don't respond well to fish oils. ALA would be a good option for you, which comes from like flaxseed. And that has been known to be extremely important in anti-inflammatory treatment for rheumatoid arthritis, MS, lupus, and renal disease, ulcerative colitis, and Crohn's disease. All right, jumping on to protein. Next section on page 67. Again, we've talked about how proteins are the building blocks of life. Our whole body is made up of protein, from our skin, our hair, our nails, our cholesterol. It's all made up of protein. So what are some proteins that we can take in? What does it do for us? What can we take in? Protein, again, it's going to help with hormones. It's going to provide the fuel that your body needs to build antibodies, to protect yourself from sickness, fluid balance, transport of nutrients and compounds, and it's another backup source of energy. It's another one of those slow burning sources of fuel. So what do those look like? We're going to say grass-fed beef is probably the ideal. Why not grass-fed? Because the cows that aren't eating grass are being fed grains like GMO corn, and that's going to actually up your omega-6s, when really we want more omega-6 in the body and less, we want more omega-3s in the body and less of the 6s. The more 6 we have, the more inflammation we have, right? And the inflammation is the root of all disease. We want to keep that down. Fish, we want wild caught. The farmed stuff, I've just heard terrible things that what they feed them, and they've actually altered farmed salmon to give them a pink color using some kind of a process to color them pink, because they're not. In nature, the way God makes them, when they swim, in Alaska, they're pink based on their diet, and that's what you really want to strive for, is wild caught. Page 69, chicken and turkey. Sorry, I didn't mention those as well. Chicken, turkey, all other proteins, as long as you can maybe find somebody who has some good farming practices where they do have some time in the grass and they aren't eating GMO corn and soy. That's ideally what you want to do. We have so many great small farms around here that you really could find some people, and I could help you do that too, if you wanted to look for just some cleaner protein options. And I think Kelsey said that you guys have a relationship with a farm that could help you with some of those options as well, maybe at a discount, maybe. So you can see Kelsey about that as well. Eggs. So we talked about how amazing eggs are. So it's very confusing. Have you gone to the grocery store and you're like,
You got
wait,
15 minutes.
what egg am I supposed to buy? Because there's farm raised,
Free range.
cage free, free range, organic pasture raised. I I actually have a really cool article about this. I have articles and podcasts, so if anybody's interested in any of these subjects, let me know and I'd be happy to shoot them over. But I read a really interesting article from Dr. Mercola about this, and in a nutshell, I'll just tell you, it is more pricey to buy organic eggs, but that is the best egg you can buy for yourself. The gold standard of all the eggs, which are more pricey, are the organic pasture eggs. They're the most humanely raised. They're given fresh air and sunshine daily and contain more quality nutrients from the pasture diet. Again, being out foraging on bugs and being out in the grass and eating kind of what they were meant to be eating. They actually yielded in a study, which is in this article that I read, more vitamin A, D, and E, twice the amount of omega-3s than the conventional egg. So the problem with the farm raised is that these are commercial factory style enclosures. So there's more disease, toxins, artificial dyes, antibiotics, and fat. Recent studies published within the past 5 years demonstrate that caged hens have increased risk for salmonella contamination than cage-free and pastured operations. So an egg is not an egg is not an egg necessarily. And I don't mean to overwhelm you with that, but I'm just wanted to give you guys in the manual, you can read in more detail what the differences are. But maybe sometimes we just have to cut costs in other areas to make this sort of something that we can do to better take care of ourselves and our families. We always have to do that cost-benefit ratio. Where can I, maybe I'm not going to do my Starbucks anymore. I'm going to make my coffee at home. I'm going to make my keto coffee. But just sort of figuring out where you can make that expense and where you can cut corners. Collagen. Collagen's amazing. You can find it everywhere now. I actually make my own almond milk yogurt and I put collagen in it to firm it up. And it's packed with amino acids, which are hugely important. They are all listed here on the bottom of page 69. But they're great for the function of your skin, your muscles, your bones. And it's hard to get from just a piece of meat. It's its own little, I would say, superfood, definitely. You can find it in powder form, which is what I use. Some people put it in their coffee. I've never tried that before.
So it's not it's not like a capsule, it's more of powder?
It is a powder. Yeah. And top of page 70 has the different collagen types.
Okay.
And the foods where you can find it. That's why bone broth has made a huge comeback, right? Because it's just loaded with collagen. And turkey and chicken bone broth have type 2, whereas beef bones have type 1, which is, I just read that last night. Fish, like your wild-caught salmon is going to have that. Berries, eggs, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, your leafy greens, citrus, garlic, tomato, and avocados. A really cool byproduct of eating collagen is that it has glutamine, and that is incredibly healing for the gut. If you're having some of that gut dysbiosis, or if you've been diagnosed with leaky gut, it's very, very good for the gut when you're healing it. Okay, so moving on. Approach with caution, top of page 71.
Have you ever tried to substitute bean broth for your coffee?
Bean
Oh,
broth?
excuse me, beef broth?
Yes, I have.
Sipping on that in the morning?
I do every winter. I don't substitute it. There's no substitute for coffee. Let's get it straight. But I make bone broth all year round. My son drinks it every single day, because he has leaky gut. And we are healing it. He was overprescribed antibiotics. We've had lots of tests done. He's just got so much permeability in the gut. The good stuff is not staying in, and the bad stuff is, coming in, and it's a process, right? We're on a journey. So that has really helped him a lot, along with some other things, reducing sugar, eating more of like a modified keto diet, fueling the brain with fats, which is what the keto diet was originally made for, was for epileptics. And now they've found a lot of uses for it for cancer patients, and also it's a diet fat, right? But yeah, I make it all the time, and in the winter I drink a cup every morning before I have my coffee. First it's this, right? We all calculated our ounces. If you don't remember, we can work on that before we leave today. I call it an internal bath, where you get up in the morning, your body has been working all night to do that that detoxification, right? It's been working all those processes for you, and then you have to flush it out. So the first thing should be a big glass or bottle of water before you do anything else, and then your bone broth, and then your coffee. But yes, that's a good question, Dale. We swear by it in our house. And my son's doing better, little by little, thank God. Okay, so sugar, processed food, grains, dairy, and soy. Do we need to go over sugar, or do we all kind of understand why sugar is
The devil.
Yeah.
Evil.
It is. It is, definitely. And it's so easy to slip into the sugar trap, right? It just doesn't have, there's no nutrients in it. There's nothing good about it except it tastes so good. And I'm not saying we can't have sweet things. I love to bake. I have a 5-year-old, you know, I make basically all my food from scratch. And we like to have sweet things, but I'm careful with what I use. Along with the stevia concentrate, I will use honey, you know. So not all sugar is, you know, supposed to be blackballed forever, because it's just not realistic. We all love a little sweet. But just pouring in like the tablespoon or 2 tablespoons in your coffee every day, and then you're having 5 cups of coffee in the day.
Well, and take a peek. So you guys have in front of you a bunch of examples of some food that people have in their day-to-day.
Yeah.
Like this little thing of orange juice. This is how much sugar is in there. Would you
dear.
eat that right now? But you do.
No.
Exactly. Good call, Kelsey, on those. I forgot those were out.
So take like some awareness there. You don't even know how much is in there on a day-to-day basis.
That's why we call it the devil. It just sneaks in. It's like
Yes.
sin. It just.
Yeah.
Well, if you've ever detoxed from it, that's how you know.
Oh, yeah.
But
You'll
my
get
sister
a
and I, when we
detox
did that, we
flu.
texted, they were like, this is from hell. Like, the fact that
You
you
get a
actually
flu.
go
Yeah,
through
flu-like symptoms.
withdrawals from
Yeah.
this thing
Yeah.
is,
Absolutely.
You're surprised because you don't realize sugar's in everything.
It's in everything. That's why I become very proficient at reading labels. That's
So I just
why.
learned beef jerky. I eat beef jerky, and the softer it is, the more sugar.
Well, and a lot of them also have MSG. They don't call it MSG. They call it something else, which we're going to get into next. I do grocery store tours with people because I think it's so important that we learn the language of food labels, because these food companies are very smart and they put additives in there and chemicals in there that are not good for you, and they call it something else that sounds benign and fine. You know, citric acid, oh, it comes from citrus, it's fine. But that's not the case. So let's segue into that. Processed foods, top of page 73. We sort of give you the breakdown on processed foods and what those look like and where they come from. Food Babe put something out this year. I really like Food Babe. She's put some big food companies on blast.
food babe.
Food Babe. Oh, you should follow her. She is a wealth of knowledge. Food Babe has gone after the big food companies. She's even gone after Chick-fil-A. Yeah, because they use food dye in their ice cream, and they use dirty GMO peanut oil to fry their foods with. I know, because we love Chick-fil-A, right?
Yes.
But she's gone after those big people because there are just some practices that are just not acceptable. There are things that we do here that are not even allowed in England or all of the European Union. They have banned a lot of these chemicals, but the US allows them still. So she goes after them, and they've made changes as a result. She doesn't just put them on blast. They actually, Kraft has started to phase out some of the food dye from a couple of their lines of mac and cheese, for example, using other natural ways to color the food orange, their noodles, their macaroni and cheese orange. But she provided this list at the bottom, and this could be, kind of a way for you just to get your eyes on what some of these chemicals look like that we want to avoid. We could do a whole session on just that. It's crazy. So these are just some additives I want you to just start to look at and be careful. Again, anything with OS or anything that has a food dye in it, especially for kids. Food dyes for the developing brain. I can tell you just from experience with my son, it's not good. It leads to ADHD, and there are a lot of reports of food dyes being harmful for a developing brain. So yes, sorry to gloss over that so quickly, but I know that you will look over that, take it with you to the grocery store along with what the heck should I eat. Moving right along to page 74, gluten, that's a really hot topic. I've heard so many different things from different doctors that I listen to podcasts from and their books that I read, and I can't find really any doctors except for Walter Longo. Walter Longo doesn't say anything about gluten-free. He just says whole grains, but most of them will say avoid gluten. But then there's this whole other issue that we've come across with, gluten-free, which is a lot of added sugar and a lot of added junk
You're
to
just
make it
changing
taste
what's
good.
added.
Yeah, pick your poison.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in general, I tend to stay away from gluten just because of all the research that I've read about, and it's just something that I choose for myself, and also my son has issues with wheat, and most wheat is not gluten-free, and it's not our grandparents' wheat anymore. It's been completely, they've done a one-over on how they handle wheat, its growth, its production, how they, spray it. So that is for you to decide. But I will tell you, whole wheat or grains are what, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna be eating some of those type of things, you want to keep them organic if you can, and whole. Something to think about. So the weirder it sounds, the more healthier it is. So if you're going to eat grains, quinoa. Quinoa is packed full of protein. So I love rice. I love white rice. I mean, who doesn't? It's so versatile. You can flavor it a lot of different ways. But it doesn't have any protein in it. It doesn't have any nutrients in it. Quinoa has nutrients in it. How about sorghum? That's a weird one. But that also has protein in it and less lectins, which can tend to disrupt a gut that has dysbiosis. Millet and wild rice. If you like rice and you can't part with it, wild rice is a better option for you in terms of grain. If you want to do some baking and you kind of want to try something other than, wheat or gluten-y products, coconut flour is like my staple at home. So is almond flour. Have you guys heard of tiger nuts yet? Tiger nuts, they're actually not nuts. They're like little roots. And they grind them up into a flour and they bake 1-to-1. You replace it for your white flour, 1-to-1. You can make anything out of it. I've made muffins, I've made cakes out of it. I get it on Amazon. Also, there's hazelnut flour. There are just so many flours out there now because people are becoming more aware of, just these other options. Hazelnut flour to bake with that, it's so tasty. It's just a different flavor profile. But yes, gluten, I'll leave that up to you guys, right? You're gonna read the manual, you're gonna read that, it can erode the gut lining, especially if they've been sprayed. Say they've been sprayed with Roundup. And Roundup just eats away at everything. That's the other one that's the devil, is sugar and Roundup. It does erode your little microvilli in your stomach, and they're like the little hairs that take in the nutrients, and those slowly start to die off and dwindle off, and it has been associated with autoimmune disorders and a whole other host of problems. So I just say be cautious. And just start to, when you leave today, just start to think about other options. And it doesn't mean buy something in a box that's gluten-free necessarily. Try maybe making some things. Again, we could talk about that as well afterwards, but I make, out of nut butters, I make little protein balls. You put a little bit of honey or your stevia, and some nut butters, and some hemp seeds, and some whatever you want to put in it, and you roll them up in a ball. And they're amazing. They're just so tasty, and lots of good options without the gluten, and even breads. I make loaves of bread from different flours too.
So are you saying even, let's just say, sometimes I do make like King Arthur or whatever it is, whole wheat flour. I use the whole wheat flour to make in my bread maker, where I don't add anything else except a little bit of honey or whatever for a loaf for my kids. But even that whole wheat isn't on the good list in a sense, right?
I mean,
like it might be better than my store-bought
Sure,
bread,
no.
but it's.
No, it is. I would say that's better than your store-bought bread.
Okay.
That's gonna have a lot of additives in it, right? Because it has to sit on a shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want you to worry too much about that. I think, that is better. What you're doing is far better than buying a store-bought loaf of bread that's on the shelf and has things in it that has to keep it alive and not, moldy for X amount of time.
Okay.
But yeah, and even thinking about maybe like a sourdough option, I know sourdough is really good for you too, if you make bread at home.
What flour to make sourdough?
Well, you could probably try it with that same wheat.
Oh.
Yeah, einkorn wheat is the best. That's the most conserved species of wheat. Have you heard of einkorn bread?
No.
You can actually buy
How do
the
you spell
flour.
that? What is
It's
it?
EINKORN. It's a type of wheat, and it's the most conserved wheat. I guess it's been around forever and ever and ever, maybe since biblical times. But they do sell einkorn flour, and you could try to make your bread with that too. And it has a little bit more nutrients than maybe like your King Arthur would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so wrapping up, the next thing we're talking about is, we talked about grains and gluten, dairy. This is a tough one. I think it depends on the person again, and I keep saying that because we're all so different. But some people can't tolerate dairy very well, or some people think that they do and they can't. So just a couple of things to throw out there. Countries with the lowest rate of dairy consumption, like those in Africa and Asia, have the lowest rates of osteoporosis. That sounds counterintuitive. High intake of milk can contribute to bone loss due to milk acids and milk sugar, called galactose. So there's a lot of sugar in our milk. Naturally occurring even, which is good when you're a baby animal or a baby infant, but when we're grown-ups, we don't need that same sugar. So there's a lot of non-dairy options for us in terms of getting our calcium, and some that might surprise you, like almonds, bok choy, canned canned salmon, chia seeds, collard greens, dried herbs, kale, sesame seeds, spinach, and okra. So dairy dangers, I'll just read off a few. Dairy has been linked to many issues: Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, Crohn's. And dairy is a simple carb, high sugar, elevates insulin. We've talked about insulin spikes, and those lead to type 2 diabetes and a whole other host of things. It's very inflammatory. Again, inflammation is damaging to the gut, and with all the sugars that are in dairy, that's what happens there. Commercial dairy milk is probably the worst. Again, we're having a pasteurized process that it's going through, where it's been heated to some ungodly number. It's very hot. It kills the nutrients in your milk. Again, those cows are being fed corn and soy, GMO corn and soy, and you're drinking that. A lot of them are treated with antibiotics. So you're actually taking in those antibiotics with you. Excuse me. Some better options for milk, if you're gonna drink milk, is try to get, an organic milk that's not been processed. They sell the cream on top like the old days. Like, it's got all the fat in it and there's cream on top. It sounds gross, but it's actually very good. It's not been tampered with. It's just more of in its raw state, but it's technically not raw. So organic if you could, grass-fed organic milk, goat and sheep's milk. Ghee is a great option for dairy. I use ghee like it's my job. It's got butyrate in it, which is really good for the gut. They've pulled out the lactose from it, depending on the brand that you get, which I could talk to you afterwards, which brands I would recommend, but they pull out the lactose, the sugar from it. But it's a great substitute for butter, and it's got all of its fat and all of its glory and integrity inside of it. Coffee alternatives, almond milk or creamer, coconut milk or creamer, or you could make a bullet coffee, which I could talk to you about how to do that. Soy. So soy is our next it's a little sketchy because we've heard that, in Asian cultures that they eat soy. And they have some of the most longest living individuals in some of these Asian countries that eat soy. But the soy that we're getting is usually processed and it's in a package. And again, it's leading to some of those leaky gut dysbiosis issues. So just to be aware of your soy, I would say the only soy that I know that I would recommend is soybeans. Organic soybeans, they're frozen, you can steam them, and they're really quick and easy to make. But if you see soy in a packaged food, I would be very, very careful about
If our
that.
soybeans, is that edamame?
Mhm. Yeah,
Thank God there's something I like that is
yeah,
on the list.
yeah. So if you're edamame, I'm good with that. But, yeah, it's the soy that's been in a package and it's just riddled, it's GMO soy. It's got chemicals on it. It's not gonna be giving you any sort of nutritional benefit whatsoever. So you can certainly read more about this here in the soy section because soy has been linked, GMO soy products have been linked to cancer and thyroid issues. My time is up. I don't know where Kelsey went, but we missed a couple of pages. But all in all, I hope this gives you sort of a glimpse at nutrition and kind of some things we can be thinking about and how can we be shopping moving forward, how can we be preparing our food moving forward. It all just starts with a little bit of knowledge and then reading up on it and trying things, just trying a few things at a time because we can't take it all on in one day. It would be overwhelming and unsustainable. So I just hope that that gives you a little something to take home with you and think about moving forward with how you eat, how you feed yourselves and your families. Thank you.